gonna work out. Anyways, here we are. I'm doing my live video tonight. So far, 0 patrons have tuned in, but hopefully, I'll get a few on here. Had a few problems. Sorry about earlier. Had to restart the whole thing. But I'm only talking to myself because I'm unknown. All right. Well, I'm gonna do this here on the floor. I thought I'd go to the park, but I thought about it eating up. Maybe I should have. Maybe next one I'll go to the park. I'm still new to doing live videos on YouTube. Okay, I got my 2 books here. Should we wait for no one to chime in to my live video? All right. So hopefully, no one. Earlier it said I had 1 viewer, but I think that was just me. That's sad. Anyways, I'm doing live poetry tonight. I thought I'd talk about poetry. I do writing advice on here. I do live readings of poetry. I love talking different topics of writing. The problem is just, and I've been working my way up to these 50 subscribers so I can do much longer videos without having to wait through a long upload time for a video no one's gonna watch. But yeah, I love giving outsider street advice on writing. That you just can't get anywhere else, because I think we're all frustrated with corporate industrial advice. I'll talk about that in another video. Tonight I'm going to concentrate. I thought I'd talk about my books. And there's my first poetry book. That one sold really well. Where Our Feelings Go to Die. It's all hand-to-hand sales. See, I'm logical. And, hopefully after this video you'll understand. Because there's a lot of people that, over the years I've talked to, that release a book, or they think about it, and their brains are too warped on the idea of the industry. And so I've had a lot of friends turn down on the idea of what a poetry book is. It's too button up. They go to college, and then they release, and they think they're professor for the, in the poetry book. And they're like, thank you, professor. And gee golly, I dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. This is not that book. This is that's how this book was born. Here, hold on. This book was born out of the exact opposite. I called it Where Our Feelings Go to Die, because I got so bored to death with listening to people on stage read their poems and talk about their boring lives and how cookie cutter it is. And I said, well, I'm going to write a book called Where Our Feelings Go to Die. But I'll get into it. I had a lot of fun. Did everything wrong with that book. Well, it says I got 14 viewers. It said I had 30 viewers, but half of them left. All right. That's great. Anyways, yeah, anti-poetry for the poets, for the masses. Anyways, I've got it memorized. So just to give you an idea of how much I loathe poetry nights, I wrote this about the author page. Now we're down to 7 people. Well, I guess they're definitely not the poets I'd hang out with. Howdy. So I'll read it. Here it goes, because everyone writes an author bio on their poetry book, and they think they're professor. So I wrote mine because I was like, well, I'm not thanking my professor. Here we go. I've been living in a hole ever since I can remember, and the only thing God gave me to dig myself out is a shovel. And the only thing that's good for is digging myself in even deeper. But the earth beneath my feet is nice and softly padded. See you when I finally break free from this wretched, miserable life and get to hell. I'll send you a postcard when I get there. So that's what I wrote. Now I'm down to 3. I love this. Doing live videos. I only got 3 people watching now, but whatever. So I put a guy on the front hanging himself. Well, in case you guys didn't hear the first part, my 3 viewers, I give like unhinged writing advice because I'm sick of the industry and all the garbage they cram down your throat. But anyways, so I wrote this poetry book, the anti-poetry book. Now I'm down to 1 person. Jeez, I might as well stop talking. But I decided, well, I'd like to sell copies of this book, but I don't want to do normal, regular poetry nights. Because that would suck. Like, how are you going to promote this book? Well, we'll get some wine and we'll get some people in turtlenecks, sweaters. Howdy, sir. And howdy again, Isaac. And Aaron. We'll get some turtleneck sweaters and we'll have a soiree. And I was like, oh, hell no. Not for my poetry book reading night. So I gathered together a classic group of poets. I got them all together and I said, no, I need unhinged poets who are not afraid to yell into the mic. And we each had a character. I wore a mini skirt and nothing else, I believe. And lipstick. I wore lipstick. And that was my character. And I read a bunch of poems from here and lost my voice and smashed a watermelon on stage all over a girl in her Sunday dress. And then I had a demonic pastor, some French gal, and then one lady, she didn't know what to do. I was like, I'm going to give you a bunch of knives. She's like, what? I was like, yeah, I got all these knives, and you're going to read poems with knives and just like be stabby towards the crowd. She's like, all right. So that's what she did. And then I convinced one friend, and I didn't really think about this, but I was like, dude, you should strip naked for the show. He's like, well, I'm not a poet. I'm like, yeah, just someone will read poetry and you paint art in the nude. Do not think that through. Because then we did the show and he actually, yeah, he couldn't do it. So I had to strip naked with him. It's a whole story, but I won't go into that. And that's what I randomly thought to talk about tonight. And this book here, Poetry Most Fall, I did like 4 or 5 shows for that one in the same kind of manner, but differently. You know, this was macabre poetry. Well, thanks, guys, for listening. The few people that stuck around. Yeah, anyways, on my channel, if you want to subscribe, I read a poem a night or I give writing advice, one of the two. Anyways, and I write young adult novels. And I hawk that stuff. Ooh, back down to 1 viewer. Whoever that is, it's maybe the one person who liked this post already. But anyways, so why would I talk about that if I give writing advice? Is because if you want to be a writer, then unfortunately, you're going to have to really start to think outside of the box because normal will not sell it. Securing book signings, trying to get your foot in the door, following the rules, it's tough. It's extremely difficult. And I sold, I don't know how many copies of I'm from South Dakota. And this is, I've always said, and I believe it's true, the best-selling poetry book in the state of South Dakota. And it is far from Christian lit or whatever, you know, which would probably suit South Dakota more. But I realized there was an audience out there demanding it. Just the button-up idea of the industry just probably would never allow that to happen. I'll read a poem maybe to allow my 2 listeners. You guys want to hear me read a poem? Give you an idea. But yeah, I did. All these poems were just written out of pure frustration. Sorry, I got nowhere else to film tonight. This is my 3rd live video. All these poems were written out of frustration with other poets on stage doing the like standard, like, you know, they went to college and they like bowed down and worshiped the same 5 poets. And that just really bothered me. And I was like, guys, we could do so much more. Like, we could. I had these ideas. No one really wanted to go along with it. I was like, what if we, like, I'll write a poem and then you write a poem that contradicts it? Just like write a poem that makes fun of my poem. And it was, everyone didn't want, no one wanted to get their feelings hurt. And I was like, well, that's where I wrote this book, Where Our Feelings Go to Die. I was like, yeah, your feelings need a place to die as a poet. I don't know. I think with poetry, people don't often. I've heard so many people read, and it's like you clearly don't want to reflect on yourself and like process this information or think anything personal about yourself in a negative light. And so I just went with my hard, tactful life. But crazy weird. All right, we're back down to 1 listener again. Hopefully it's the 1 person who liked this. I'll read a poem here for my 1 listener. And then I guess I'll continue to make this all up as I go along. All right, this poem's called Poet's Vomit. And I truly wrote this out of frustration for a lot of my fellow poets on the stage. Oh, dear God, no more Sylvia Plath, please. And anyways, here we go. The self-righteous... the righteous I'm reading it from the phone. Hold on. The righteous self-spoken prophet who rages with the storm, wear their words out on paper dresses adorned in thick layers of lengthy tens. It's hard for me to understand the voices who settled hipsters repent, predicting and predenting the landlord, heartless minds of children with no arms. I used to read all the poetry like that. Complex trigonometry, a mechanical formula for the apocryphy. The fleck of dark matter wedged in my intestine, my mortician must scrape at this bile, that which has raped and built and purged. Crusaders of the regal, repeating what was once been heard, sonnets and haikus. And just for your information, oh God, is that all they teach in English class? Jack Kerouac, Ellen Ginsberg, William S. Burroughs, run the gambit, the water over the heel, the eyes of beans, religion on a pedestal, no scrambled eggs or flat tonal shapes, no balancing act, no conjuring spells, no arcs, no rhythm or repeating words. They drone on and on and on and on, yet foresee no light at the end of the tunnel, nor know of the fuel in which they continuously consume. Now I'm down to 0 viewers. Drown in tears, die in plastic tubes. We burn in the pyres of emotional filth, all for the audience they address, the lines deferred, to whom this concerns, and whom this concerns, and the in which, who, in the are not, and the very well-intended art in which no suffering yearns. Wow. Jeez. This has been a crazy ride with my first live video. I've got a lot of ups and downs here. Back down to where most poetry nights ended, and that was 0 people. Just me and the guy sweeping up. All right, well, I'm good with that. So anyways, yeah, for my first official live video, I'm talking about poetry and the crazy things I've done with it. But man, that's how this book got born. I got so sick of hearing the same poems read over after going to hundreds of poetry nights. I was like, I know what you're going to read. I know the poem. I know the words you're going to use. And I got so sick of it, and I started writing anti-poetry. But this book here, I still had a lot of fun with that, Poetry Most Foul. And maybe the cover's deceiving. But, and that had a lot of more of my button-up, no, I wouldn't say button-up poetry, but darker style poetry, and I did several shows for that. Dark themed poetry, like Alfred Hitchcock style themed poetry, and anything I could do out of the ordinary. I think we had someone gave an abortion on stage with a plunger. Like, I had no say in that. I was like, all right, well, if that's what you want to do. And then we had a cult expert. I think we did a murder mystery hour on that one. This was all done like as cheap as humanly possible. Yeah, as cheap as humanly possible. Because no self respecting establishment in town would allow me to do that. I had to just sell it all and pretend there was something there. And I even made this handmade poster. And I went through it and I thought, what lies could I spread to get people to come in to see that show? And I lied my ass off on the poster. And we had a packed house show up, and half of them, halfway through that show, half the crowd got up and left but we had people were on their phones texting, and there was standing room only by the end of the night. That show went so well, and this was all through word of mouth and mostly based off a lie on that poster. Like, whatever I could get you to believe, just shock therapy, just like intense, just like, really, you're gonna do what? And then the people I convinced to be a part of that poetry night, the occultist and all the others, were like, are we really gonna do this? And I'm like, well, probably not, but just kind of fake it, make it happen, just, wholeheartedly. We got them through the door. That first show, I didn't charge them any money. Man, I wish I could have made a killing. But oh well. So, yeah, I guess for my first video, that kind of goes over the writing journey of these poetry books. Yeah. And I sold people on a lot of lies over the years with these two books. Just the idea that poetry didn't have to necessarily tell the truth all the time. They never did. Every girl I've seen on stage sit there and talk, oh, this guy left me, I was so great. Oh, I don't know, I heard your poem. I don't know if you were that great of a girlfriend, But yeah, I had a lot of fun with those two poetry books. Well, I'm going to leave it at this for tonight, I guess, since everyone walked off and I've been live for 20 minutes almost. Damn. But I don't know, yeah, and I did the cover art for it. And I lied repeatedly throughout these books. That was a lot of fun. This one I did. Oh, there's my logo. I made that up. That's based off a famous insane asylum. And then that's the copyright information. Yeah. But I just didn't want a standard poetry book. I just thought, let's just make it wild and make things up. And then this one, I think this book's got one of the poems, it just says poem omitted due to copyright infringement. And I had my friend, the English teacher, looked at it and was just pissed. She's like, you can't do that. And I was like, why not? I was like, I didn't actually, it just says omitted due to copyright infringement. He says, you could get sued by who, myself? I don't know. Well, thanks for the viewers that stuck around for a little while, even though you took off. And no one's currently listening right now. I appreciate the one like. And hopefully I'll come back next time and I'll just read a few poems. And maybe one of these talks I'll do writing advice, as I have yet understood what to do on here. But thanks for listening, and hopefully some of you will subscribe and listen to some of my poems as I read them. And if you're a writer, check it out. I do writing advice. Oh, and I got live readings of my chapters from my book, which you can ignore. Thanks for tuning in.